She only wanted to finish her shift and go home to rest. He only wanted one quiet night. But when a storm led a cleaner to the wrong door and into the billionaire's room, the night that followed would change both of their lives forever.
Hello, if you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and tap the notification bell. Type in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as touching as this one, or maybe even crazier. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's begin.
The red cliffs of Sedona stood silent under a restless desert sky. Storm clouds gathered like bruises over the horizon, their edges glowing faintly against the fading sun. Inside the Silver Mesa Resort, the marble floors gleamed under soft light, smelling faintly of polish and lemon. Gina Bolton, the night cleaner, moved her cart down the hall, gloves on, eyes down, her mind miles away. She'd been working since dawn, her body aching in quiet defiance. 12 hours, 14 rooms, endless silence. She was used to people ignoring her, guests, managers, even coworkers who spoke to her like she was furniture. But tonight, everything felt heavier. Her phone buzzed inside her pocket, one new message from her babysitter. The landlord came again. Says he'll change the locks if rent's not in by Friday. Gina exhaled sharply, the sound too tired to be anger. Friday, she whispered. Just 2 more days. She pushed her cart toward the last suite of the night. The carpet muffled her steps, and the distant thunder rolled closer, shaking the windows. Then she heard it, raised voices near the elevator. A man in a dark suit stormed down the hall, his expression sharp with fury. "Who cleaned my room?" he barked at the front desk clerk behind him. "That sculpture was imported from Italy." The clerk froze. His eyes darted toward Gina. The man's glare followed. You're the cleaner?" Her mouth opened, but before she could answer, her supervisor, Mr. Klein, a man who smelled of cologne and arrogance, stepped forward. "Miss Bolton," he said with a polished sneer, "you've been warned about rushing your work." "I didn't touch his sculpture," Gina said, her voice trembling but firm. "It was already chipped." Mr. Klein smirked. "Then consider this your last mistake. You're done here." Her heart dropped. "You can't—" He waved her off. "Turn in your badge." And just like that, her entire world, her paycheck, her routine, her last thread of security was stripped away in front of strangers who wouldn't remember her face tomorrow. By midnight, Gina sat on the curb behind the resort, her folded uniform on her lap. The desert rain finally broke, thin, cold, relentless. She stared at the neon reflection of the hotel sign in a puddle by her feet, the letters warping with every drop. Silver Mesa. The name looked different when you saw it from the gutter. She whispered to herself, "I just need one night, one clean bed, one quiet place to breathe." The wind carried the words away, but they echoed inside her head until they felt like a prayer. And then a reckless thought followed. She stood, slinging her worn backpack over her shoulder, and looked up at the tower of light that crowned the resort. The penthouse suite. She knew who stayed there tonight. Everyone in the building did. Matt DaCosta, the man who owned the entire resort chain. The billionaire whose picture hung in the employee lounge. Gina wasn't thinking about him as a man or a name. She was thinking about the bed upstairs. Untouched, warm, safe. The elevator ride felt endless. Her heart pounded in her ears, louder than the thunder outside. When the doors opened onto the top floor, the air changed, cleaner, colder, smelling faintly of cedar and money. She walked down the hallway, her shoes squeaking on the carpet, and stopped at the door with the gold plate, PH. Her hand trembled on the handle. One deep breath, one knock. No answer. Another knock. Still silence. She turned the handle, unlocked. The room was dark except for the city lights spilling through the glass. The sound of rain filled the air, soft and constant. She stepped inside, barefoot now, her soaked shoes left by the door out of habit. The luxury felt unreal. Marble counters, polished floors, silk drapes swaying with the wind. Then a low voice came from the shadows. "Do you make a habit of walking into rooms that aren't yours?" She froze. A man stood near the minibar, tall and calm, his tie loosened, the faint smell of whiskey in the air. He wasn't angry, just curious. "I thought this room was empty," she said quickly. "It never is," he replied. She took a step back, eyes darting toward the door. "I'll go. I'm sorry." But something in his tone stopped her. "You look like you've had a long day," he said quietly. "Sit. The rain's not stopping anytime soon." She hesitated, unsure if she'd heard kindness or danger, but exhaustion won. She sank on the edge of the couch, hands folded tight. He poured a glass of water and placed it in front of her. "You work here?" She said, "I used to." Their eyes met. Two strangers, one broken by burden, the other by success. And in the storm's reflection against the glass, neither of them saw what was coming. A night that would strip them bare, reveal the truth they'd both been hiding, and change everything they thought they knew about themselves.
The rain didn't stop. It fell harder, pounding against the glass walls like 1,000 unspoken words. Matt DaCosta leaned back against the counter, studying the woman sitting on his couch. She was still trembling, not from fear, but from sheer exhaustion. Her hair clung to her face, her uniform soaked through, her shoes left neatly by the door. "What's your name?" he asked. "Gina," she said, barely above a whisper. He nodded. "Gina what?" "Bolton." He took a slow sip of his drink. "You work here, Gina Bolton." "I did." "What happened?" She hesitated. Her fingers twisted the edge of her sleeve. "I got fired tonight." Matt said nothing for a moment. He watched her eyes flicker with quiet defiance, the kind of look only people who fought too long to explain themselves ever wore. "Was it your fault?" "No." Her answer was simple, unflinching. He nodded once, setting his glass down. "Then I suppose it doesn't matter." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was oddly human. Two people who didn't owe each other explanations, sitting in a room that smelled faintly of rain and expensive whiskey. Gina leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "I didn't mean to bother you. Her voice cracked, the words catching in her throat. "I just needed somewhere clean to close my eyes, just for a few hours." Matt's brow furrowed slightly. "That's all you wanted? One night?" She looked up, eyes tired but steady. "Just one night, then I'll go." He exhaled, almost smiling, not from amusement, but from disbelief. "You walked into a billionaire's suite asking for sleep?" "I didn't ask," she said quietly. "I hoped." That stopped him. There was no manipulation in her voice, no expectation, no seduction, just truth, simple and raw. Matt turned away, walking to the window. Lightning split the sky beyond the glass, illuminating the red cliffs that surrounded Sedona like watchful ghosts. "You know," he said, "most people who end up at my door want something very different. I'm not most people." He glanced back at her, and for the first time that night, he believed her. He moved to the small closet, pulled out a folded blanket, and placed it on the couch. "You can stay here tonight. Just tonight." Gina's lips parted in disbelief. "Why?" He shrugged. "Maybe I'm tired of sending people away." Her eyes softened, unsure whether to thank him or fear what the offer might mean. "You don't know me." "I don't have to. You're cold, and you look like you haven't slept in days. That's enough." She nodded slowly. "Thank you." Matt sat across from her, the low hum of the storm between them. "So what will you do tomorrow?" "Start over," she said. "It's what people like me do." He tilted his head. "People like you?" "Cleaners," she said with a faint, tired smile. "We scrub away other people's messes until we forget our own. Then we do it again the next day." Her words hit harder than he expected. For a moment, the silence stretched heavy with something unsaid. He stood, pacing toward the window.
I used to think money fixed things, he murmured. Turns out it just buys better distractions. Gina's gaze followed him. Then maybe you're just cleaning too, only with bigger tools. He turned back, a small smirk crossing his face. You're bold for someone sleeping in a stranger's penthouse. Maybe I'm too tired to be scared. They both laughed quietly, the first sound of relief either had made in months. Later, when the thunder softened to a distant hum, Gina stretched out on the couch. Matt dimmed the lights, leaving only the glow of the storm outside. As he turned to leave, she said softly, "Why did you really let me stay?" He paused at the doorway. "Because you looked like I did when I lost everything." She didn't answer. But long after he disappeared into the guest room, Gina lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The hum of the rain became a lullaby. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone with her exhaustion. And somehow, that was enough.
The storm rolled deeper into the night, thunder shaking the glass walls while rain whispered against them like restless confession. The penthouse lights were dim, casting soft amber glows that flickered across the room. Gina lay on the couch, wide awake despite exhaustion. Every sound felt magnified. The ticking of the wall clock, the soft hum of the minibar, her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. She turned her head toward the glass wall where Sedona's cliffs glowed faintly under the lightning. She had spent years cleaning rooms like this. The scent of expensive linen, the quiet hum of air conditioning, the untouched comfort of people who never had to wonder where they'd sleep. Now she was in one. Not as staff, not as invisible, but as something else she didn't know how to define. The faint creak of a door made her sit up. Matt stepped out from the guest room, jacket gone, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He carried 2 mugs of coffee, steam rising in soft curls. "I figured you weren't sleeping," he said. She accepted the cup, warming her hands around it. "You figured right." We sat in silence for a while, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. "You live here?" she asked finally. "Sometimes," he said. "Mostly I live in boardrooms, planes, and lawsuits. This is just where I stopped moving." She studied him for a moment, the calm mask, the practiced tone. "That sounds lonely." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned toward the window, eyes reflecting the lightning. "You ever lose something and pretend you didn't because admitting it would make it real?" Gina nodded slowly. "Once." "What was it?" "My life," she said quietly. "Piece by piece until I looked around and realized I didn't recognize it anymore." Matt turned back to her. For the first time, the confident, untouchable billionaire looked human, just another soul trying to hold himself together. "I know that feeling. A few years ago, my best friend died. His name was Rex Greenberg. We built this company together. He was the part of it that made it human." Gina's eyes lifted. "Rex Greenberg?" Matt frowned slightly. "You knew him?" "I worked for him, before this place. He used to talk about you, said you were the brain and he was the heart." Matt looked away, jaw tightening. "Then I failed him. He trusted me to protect what we built. I got greedy. He walked away, and 2 months later he was gone. I never got to say sorry." The rain outside softened, but inside, the silence grew heavy, grief hanging between them like smoke. Gina set her cup down. "You think saying sorry would have changed anything?" "I don't know," he said. "But it would have made me feel like a better man." She looked at him, her voice gentle. "Maybe being a better man isn't about what you say to the dead. Maybe it's about what you do for the living." Matt's gaze held hers, steady, searching. There was no pity in her tone, no awe for his wealth, no fear of his power, just truth. And it disarmed him. He leaned back, a tired smile tugging at his lips. "You should have been the one running this company." "I don't have the wardrobe for it," she said softly. And he laughed, a quiet, surprised sound that felt like the first breath after drowning. The clock on the wall struck 2. They talked until 3. About her son, 8 years old, obsessed with airplanes. About her mother in the nursing home. About his life before the headlines when success was still about building something that mattered.
Each story was another thread, weaving two opposite worlds into the same fabric. At some point, Gina fell quiet. "You know what's strange?" she said. "I thought if I ever met someone like you, I'd feel small, but I don't." Matt looked at her, eyes soft. "Maybe that's because you're not." She smiled faintly, looking toward the window. The storm had passed. The sky was beginning to pale, thin traces of dawn outlining the cliffs beyond the glass. "You should get some sleep," he said. "I can't," she whispered. "If I close my eyes, I'll wake up and this will feel like a dream." "Then don't close them," he said quietly. "Stay awake. Watch the sunrise." They stood together at the window, the billionaire and the cleaner, as the desert came alive with gold. The night that had begun in exhaustion ended in something unspoken, fragile, and real. When the light touched her face, she turned to him and said softly, "Thank you for letting me exist tonight." He shook his head. "You didn't exist, Gina. You reminded me to." Neither of them knew what would happen next, but both of them knew one truth, that nothing about their lives would ever be the same again. The rain had stopped hours ago, leaving Sedona washed clean under the pale light of dawn. The cliffs glowed with the first touch of sunlight, the desert still glistening from the storm. Inside the penthouse, the air was quiet, the kind of quiet that follows a night that meant something. Gina sat by the window, still in her uniform, clutching a cup of cold coffee. Her eyes traced the horizon, where mist curled over red rock like slow smoke. It didn't feel real. For once, there was no rush, no supervisor shouting her name, no sound of carts or vacuums, just stillness, fragile, borrowed stillness. She turned at the sound of footsteps. Matt appeared, freshly showered, a towel draped over his shoulder. He looked different somehow. Not polished, not untouchable, just present. "You didn't sleep," he said. She shook her head. "Didn't want to waste a bed like this on dreams." He smiled faintly, setting his watch on the counter. "You could stay longer. I'll make breakfast." She stood immediately. "No. I've already stayed too long. Thank you for last night, Mr. DaCosta." He frowned. "It's Matt." She hesitated, then nodded. "Matt, thank you. You didn't have to be kind." He studied her, the way she held herself small, always ready to leave, like someone who'd never been allowed to rest. "What are you going to do now?" she said. "Find another job. Clean another hallway. Start again. It's what people like me do." "You keep saying that," he murmured. "People like you." She looked down. "Because people like you don't have to." The silence between them deepened, both of them knowing it was goodbye. Gina reached for her backpack. Her hands trembled as she zipped it shut. "I'm sorry if I caused any trouble. I shouldn't have come here." Matt's voice softened. "You didn't cause trouble. You reminded me what it looks like when someone keeps going even when no one sees them." She met his gaze. "Don't turn me into a lesson, Matt. I'm just tired." Her honesty hit him, like truth always does, quietly but deeply. She slung her bag over her shoulder and walked toward the door. "Goodbye." He stood there, watching her go, the woman who had walked into his life uninvited and somehow left it cleaner than before. When the door closed, the penthouse felt emptier than it had in years. Matt turned toward the table. That's when he saw it, her notebook small and worn, half tucked under the cushion where she'd been sitting. Its cover was frayed, the edges bent from years of use. He opened it carefully. Inside were scribbled thoughts, poems, lists, quotes written in messy penmanship. One page caught his eye. The ink faded but still readable. "When no one sees you, keep going. Kindness still counts, even when the world forgets your name." Matt read it twice, then a third time. For the first time in years, his chest tightened. Not from anger or guilt, but from something he hadn't felt since Rex was alive. Purpose. He closed the notebook gently, his reflection in the glass behind him, a man who had everything but peace.
Matt didn't go into the office that morning. He sat in the penthouse as sunlight crept across the floor, the city waking below. At noon, he called his assistant. "Find out why a cleaner named Gina Bolton was terminated last night, and I want every record, every complaint, every name." By evening, the truth was clear. Gina had been fired unfairly. His board had ignored it. The supervisor had covered himself. Matt closed his laptop and made one quiet decision. He wasn't done with her story yet. He called Human Resources. He said, reinstate her and double her pay. The woman on the other end hesitated. "Sir, she's already been replaced." "Then replace the replacement," Matt said simply. When he hung up, he opened Gina's notebook again. Her handwriting danced across the pages, pieces of a life built on survival. A single line at the bottom of one page stopped him. "Kindness is the only thing we leave behind that can't be bought back." He closed the book and stared out the window, the Sedona sky now streaked with gold and crimson. Somewhere out there she was probably walking home in the same clothes, wondering if anything would ever change. And for the first time in a long, long time, Matt DeCosta wanted to make sure something did. What would you have done if you were in Gina's place? Walked away quietly, or left a note behind? Tell me in the comments. I'm curious how you'd write your own ending to that night.
2 weeks passed. Sedona storms had cleared, leaving the desert air crisp and golden. The Silver Mesa resort gleamed brighter than ever, though for Matt DeCosta, the shine felt hollow. He'd spent those 2 weeks reviewing reports, walking corridors he'd never noticed before, and reading Gina Bolton's notebook every night before sleep. Each line etched itself deeper into him. It wasn't poetry, it was survival in ink. Words written by someone who kept moving even when no one saw her. By the 3rd week, he made a decision. Matt arrived at the resort unannounced. No entourage, no assistant, just him and a silence that followed like gravity. He walked through the back halls, down to the service floor, a world far removed from the polished lobbies his name was built on. The smell of detergent and industrial soap hit him first, then voices, laughter, chatter, exhaustion. It was the sound of the people who kept the illusion alive. He spotted her before she saw him. Gina. She was bent over a cart stacked with linens, her hair tied back, a small smile on her face as she helped another cleaner fix a broken vacuum cord. There was something different about her now, the same fatigue, but steadier somehow, like someone who had accepted their bruises but refused to stop walking. When she finally looked up, her body went still. "Mr. DeCosta?" He smiled faintly. "Matt, I told you, it's Matt." She straightened slowly, unsure what to do with her hands. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." "Neither did I, but here we are." He gestured toward the narrow hallway. "Can we talk?" She hesitated, then nodded. They found a quiet corner by the storage room, low ceilings, dim lights, the faint buzz of an old vending machine. "I heard you got your job back," he said. "I did. They didn't tell me why. I figured it was a mistake." He smiled softly. "It wasn't." She narrowed her eyes. "You?" He nodded. "You were fired unfairly. I fixed it." Gina sighed, her voice careful. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he said. "That's why I did." For a moment, neither spoke. The distance between their worlds pressed in again, invisible but heavy. "You shouldn't be down here," she said finally. "People might talk." "I'm not here as your boss," he said. "I'm here because I've been thinking about something you said that night." "What did I say?" He looked at her. "You told me maybe being a better man isn't about what you say to the dead, it's about what you do for the living." She blinked, surprised he remembered. "And?" He smiled softly. "And you were right." He took a small step closer. "I'm starting a new initiative, something in Rex Greenberg's name, a community fund for local families who can't afford care, schooling, housing. But I don't want another corporate charity. I want it to mean something." She frowned slightly. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," he said quietly, "I need someone who understands what it feels like to start over every day and still show up. Someone who sees what I can't see." "You want me to help you?" "Yes." She let out a disbelieving laugh. "You could hire any PR director, any executive." "I don't need an executive. I need honesty. You have that." She crossed her arms, half defensive, half trembling. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. "You work hard, you tell the truth, and when no one was looking, you wrote down the kind of wisdom most people spend lifetimes trying to buy." Her lips parted slightly. "You read my notebook?" He nodded. "It found me." She looked down, shaking her head. "That wasn't meant for anyone else to see." "I know," he said softly, "but maybe it was meant to be heard." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she said, "If I say yes, what happens?" "You help me build something real, something that belongs to the people who keep this place running." "And if I say no?" He smiled faintly. "Then I'll thank you for the night that changed my life, and I'll let you walk away." She stared at him, the weight of both choices pressing hard. Finally, she said, "I'll think about it." Matt nodded. "That's all I ask." As he turned to leave, she said softly, "Matt, why me?" He met her eyes. "Because I stopped believing in good people a long time ago, until you walked into my room." When he left, Gina leaned against the wall, her pulse racing. She didn't know if she was ready to step into his world again, but deep down, she already knew the answer.
3 weeks later, the sun hung low over Sedona, turning the cliffs copper and gold. The new foundation office was nothing like the glass towers Matt DaCosta was used to. A converted storefront downtown, walls lined with photos of local families and handwritten notes pinned beside them. At the long wooden table near the window sat Gina Bolton, her hair tied loosely, sorting through donation letters. She looked different now, still grounded, still modest, but lighter somehow. Matt stood by the door, jacket off, sleeves rolled, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've been here since 7, he said. "Take a break before you start fixing the world." She smiled faintly, not looking up. "I'm not fixing the world, just the printer." He laughed quietly, handing her the cup. "That's usually harder." They sat opposite each other, sunlight spilling across the table between them. The past month had changed both of them. Matt had stepped away from board meetings, choosing instead to meet the people his company had forgotten. Janitors, cooks, cleaners, families who worked behind the scenes of his success. Gina had become the quiet pulse of the new project, writing proposals, organizing outreach, insisting that every decision pass one test. Would this help the people no one listens to? He found himself looking forward to her notes in the mornings, short, handwritten reminders taped to the office door. "Remember why you started." "Kindness doesn't need an audience." Each one made him pause. Each one reminded him that wealth meant nothing without purpose. One afternoon, they drove out to a housing site on the edge of town, a stretch of desert where the foundation planned to build new homes for families displaced after the floods. The air smelled of dust and rain. Gina walked ahead, clipboard in hand, her boots sinking into the soft red soil. "You really think you can do this?" she asked. "I think we can." She turned to him, squinting against the sunlight. "You sound like Rex." Matt's expression softened. "He used to say that, didn't he?" "All the time," she said. "He believed in people before profit. That's why everyone loved him." "Not everyone," Matt murmured. "Not me. I envied him for it." She stopped, facing him. "You don't have to envy him anymore. You're doing what he would have done." He met her gaze, the wind tugging gently at her hair. "Only because you reminded me what he stood for." She looked away, the moment too heavy to hold. "Don't give me credit for what you chose to do."
I'm giving you credit for helping me remember who I was supposed to be." They stood there, the sun sinking lower, long shadows stretching between them. For a while, neither spoke. Then Gina said quietly, "It feels good to build something again, even if it's just one small piece of good in a broken world." Matt smiled. "It's not small. Not to the people who live here." She nodded, brushing the red dust from her hands. "Then maybe it's enough." Back at the office that evening, Matt found another note on his desk, this one written on the corner of a supply list. "Hope doesn't shout. It whispers and waits for someone to listen." He sat down, tracing the handwriting with his thumb. He realized that what started as gratitude had grown into something deeper: respect, warmth, a quiet understanding that didn't need to be named. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone in his own company. That night, as the office lights dimmed, Gina stood by the window watching the last glow fade from the cliffs. Matt joined her, his reflection beside hers in the glass. "You ever think about that night?" he asked. Softly. "Every day," she said. "Not because it saved me, because it reminded me I still mattered." He nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "It reminded me, too." Outside, the desert wind rose again, but this time, it didn't sound lonely. If someone gave you a second chance to rebuild your life, not with money, but with purpose, would you take it? Tell me in the comments what hope would look like for you.
The morning sun spilled across the glass windows of the Rex Greenberg Foundation, turning the office gold. Gina arrived early, as always, sorting through donation letters before the day began. The building was still, peaceful, until the front door opened and a voice from another life broke the calm. "Still playing charity, I see?" Gina turned. Renee Newman stood in the doorway, designer heels clicking against the tile, her expression sharp as polished glass. Her presence was cold enough to freeze the room. "Can I help you?" Gina asked, steady but cautious. "You can tell me where he is," Renee said, crossing her arms. "I know he's here." Before Gina could respond, Matt DaCosta appeared behind her, his face tightening the instant he saw Renee. "Renee?" he said evenly. "What are you doing here?" She smiled, the kind that never reached her eyes. "You stopped answering my calls, Matt. You cut ties with every investor, every partner. And then I hear whispers that you're playing savior in Sedona with your new project?" Her gaze slid toward Gina, cold and deliberate. "I now see what kind of project it really is." Gina stiffened, but Matt stepped forward before she could speak. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, don't I?" Renee said. "It's all over the press. The billionaire recluse and his former cleaner. Quite the story." Gina's stomach dropped. "What?" Renee pulled out her phone and held it up. There it was, a tabloid headline. "Matt DaCosta's charity scandal. Ex-employee turned companion?" A photo taken outside the foundation. Matt and Gina walking side by side, smiling, dust on their clothes after the site visit. To anyone else, it was innocent. To a world hungry for scandal, it was fuel. Gina felt her throat tighten. "This isn't what it looks like." Renee tilted her head, voice dripping with mock concern. "Of course it isn't, dear. It never is." Matt's voice hardened. "You should leave." Her laugh echoed against the glass. "You're throwing away everything you built for her?" He said, "I'm rebuilding something better." Her smile vanished. "You'll regret this." Then she turned and walked out, the sound of her heels fading down the hall like a closing door. That night, the phone calls began. Reporters, board members, old colleagues. Matt ignored most of them, but he couldn't ignore the headlines multiplying across every business site. He sat in his office, staring at the screen while Gina stood at the door. "You should let me go," she said quietly. He looked up sharply. "No." "They're saying I used you." that I'm sleeping my way out of poverty. It's not true, he said. It doesn't matter, she replied. You know how it works. People believe the story they want.
The morning sun spilled across the glass windows of the Rex Greenberg Foundation, turning the office gold. Gina arrived early, as always, sorting through donation letters before the day began. The building was still, peaceful, until the front door opened and a voice from another life broke the calm. "Still playing charity, I see." Gina turned. Renee Newman stood in the doorway, designer heels clicking against the tile, her expression sharp as polished glass. Her presence was cold enough to freeze the room. "Can I help you?" Gina asked, steady but cautious. "You can tell me where he is," Renee said, crossing her arms. "I know he's here." Before Gina could respond, Matt DaCosta appeared behind her. His face tightened the instant he saw Renee. "Renee," he said evenly, "what are you doing here?" She smiled, the kind that never reached her eyes. "You stopped answering my calls, Matt. You cut ties with every investor, every partner. And then I hear whispers that you're playing savior in Sedona with your new project." Her gaze slid toward Gina, cold and deliberate. "Now I see what kind of project it really is." Gina stiffened, but Matt stepped forward before she could speak. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, don't I?" Renee said. "It's all over the press. The billionaire recluse and his former cleaner. Quite the story." Gina's stomach dropped. "What?" Renee pulled out her phone and held it up. There it was, a tabloid headline. "Matt DaCosta's charity scandal. Ex-employee turned companion?" A photo taken outside the foundation, Matt and Gina walking side by side, smiling, dust on their clothes after the site visit. To anyone else, it was innocent. To a world hungry for scandal, it was fuel. Gina felt her throat tighten. "This isn't what it looks like." Renee tilted her head, voice dripping with mock concern. "Of course it isn't, dear. It never is." Matt's voice hardened. "You should leave." Renee's laugh echoed against the glass. "You're throwing away everything you built for her?" "I'm rebuilding something better." Her smile vanished. "You'll regret this." Then she turned and walked out, the sound of her heels fading down the hall like a closing door. That night, the phone calls began. Reporters, board members, old colleagues. Matt ignored most of them, but he couldn't ignore the headlines multiplying across every business site. He sat in his office staring at the screen while Gina stood at the door. "You should let me go," she said quietly. He looked up sharply. "No." "They're saying I used you," she said, "that I'm sleeping my way out of poverty." "It's not true," he said. "It doesn't matter," she replied. "You know how it works. People believe the story they want." He stood. "Gina," she shook her head, "you built your name on credibility. I can't be the reason you lose it." "Then let me lose it," he said, voice breaking slightly. "For once, I want to stand for something that isn't polished and perfect." Her eyes glistened. "You can't fix this by saving me, Matt. That's not what I asked for." He stepped closer. "What do you want?" She swallowed hard. "For you to remember why you started this and not destroy it because of me." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed again. Another call from the board. He ignored it, but she saw the wear on his face. "I should go," she whispered. "Please don't." But she was already walking toward the door. "Gina!" She stopped just long enough to say, "You gave me a reason to hope again. Don't let the world take that from you." Then she was gone. 2 days later, Matt stood before his board of directors, men and women in suits who once had envied him, now watching him with polite contempt. One of them, Greg Holman, leaned forward. "We've received complaints, Matt, accusations of favoritism, misuse of funds. The foundation's optics are troubling." "Optics?" Matt repeated bitterly. "Is that what truth has become? A reflection instead of reality?" Your relationship with Ms. Bolton compromises your credibility. I don't have a relationship with her, Matt said. Then you'll publicly say so, Greg replied. You'll apologize for the misunderstanding, clarify the nature of her employment, and remove her from any project association. Matt's jaw tightened. You want me to erase her, to keep your image clean? The room fell silent. Greg sighed. It's the smart move. Matt's eyes drifted toward the window, sunlight breaking through the clouds, casting streaks of light across the table. Maybe I'm done being smart. He rose from his seat, sliding his resignation letter across the table. You're quitting? Greg asked. I'm choosing, and I'm choosing what's right. He walked out before anyone could stop him. That evening, Gina heard the news on a local broadcast. Matt DaCosta resigns amid scandal, citing personal ethics and creative differences. She sank onto her couch, staring at the flickering image of his face, calm, resolute, unbroken. Her son, half asleep, beside her, asked, Mom, is that the man who gave you your job back? She brushed his hair gently. Yes, sweetheart. Is he a bad man? She smiled faintly, her throat tight. No, he's just brave in a world that doesn't like brave people. Outside, the desert wind howled softly against the window. And somewhere across town, Matt sat alone in the quiet of his empty penthouse, staring out at the same cliffs, the same horizon, wondering if losing everything was the only way to finally find himself.
Sedona was quieter now. The storm had passed weeks ago, but for Gina Bolton, the air still carried a weight she couldn't shake. The foundation was silent, doors locked, lights dimmed, projects paused. She'd gone back to part-time cleaning, this time at a local diner on the edge of town, where no one recognized her name from the news. She didn't mind the quiet work, the hum of the dishwasher, the hiss of coffee on the stove. It gave her something to hold on to, something small and honest. But every time she walked past the old foundation building, she slowed. Through the glass, she could still see the ghosts of that brief, impossible hope. Her notes on the wall, the half-finished plans for the housing project, and Matt's handwriting across the whiteboard. Do good, even when it costs you. She'd thought about erasing it 100 times, but somehow she couldn't. Across town, Matt DaCosta sat in the corner of a small desert cafe. No bodyguards, no meetings, no schedule. The billionaire who had once moved through boardrooms like he owned time now lived on its mercy. He nursed a cup of black coffee gone cold, his phone dark beside him. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, the kind that came after you've done the right thing and lost everything anyway. Every headline had faded, but not the echo of her words the last night they spoke. You gave me a reason to hope again. Don't let the world take that from you. He hadn't. But in keeping his promise, he'd lost her too. He wondered if she was okay, if she'd found work, if she still hated him for not fighting harder. When he finally opened his email for the first time in days, one unread message sat at the top. No subject line, no signature, just a single line of text. The families are still waiting for those homes. If you still believe in what we started, you know where to find me. Matt stared at the words for a long time, his heart thudding slowly in his chest. Then he smiled, small, sad, but certain. He stood, leaving a 20 under the untouched cup, and walked out into the dry, desert light. 2 days later, Gina was back at the construction site, the same patch of red earth where the foundation's work had begun. She'd come alone, to clear out the storage containers before the city repossessed them. The wind carried dust and the faint scent of rain. When she heard the footsteps behind her, she didn't turn right away. I was wondering if you'd come, she said softly. Matt's voice came from behind her. You knew I would.
She faced him then. He looked different, older but calmer, like a man who had finally stopped running. "I got your message," he said. "I figured you'd see it eventually. I didn't send it for you." He nodded. "You sent it for them." "For them," she echoed. The wind swept between them, stirring the dust at their feet. "I kept the promise," he said. "I didn't let the board shut this down completely. The funding is frozen, but the assets are still under my name. If we want to finish what we started, we can." Gina crossed her arms. "We? Yes," he said, "but only if you're still willing to work with me." She studied him, the man who had once owned skyscrapers and headlines, now standing in the dirt beside her, asking for a second chance. "You lost everything because of this, because of me," she said quietly. "No," he said, "because of truth. You just made me stop pretending." She hesitated, eyes glistening under the pale desert light. "You really think people like us can start again after all that?" He smiled faintly. "People like us are the only ones who ever do." For a moment, neither moved. Then Gina turned toward the field, toward the rows of stakes marking future homes. "If we do this, we do it right. No press, no names, just work." "Agreed," Matt said. She extended her hand. He took it. Their palms were rough, dusted with red soil. No promises, no declarations, just a choice. Quiet, steady, real. That evening, as the sun sank behind the cliffs, they stood together beside the first wooden frame being raised. The air smelled of sawdust and rain. Workers laughed in the distance. "This is what Rex wanted," Matt said. "No," she nodded. "This is what he hoped you'd remember." He looked at her then, truly looked, and for the first time in months, he felt something that wasn't regret. Peace.
The months that followed were slower, quieter, but alive. The abandoned construction site became a heartbeat again. Under the heat of the Sedona sun, trucks returned, foundations were poured, frames rose against the red cliffs. The Rex Greenberg Foundation, thought to be finished, was reborn, not through money or image, but through hands that believed in something better. This time, there were no reporters, no ribbon cuttings, no cameras waiting to twist the truth. Just people, builders, families, volunteers, and two souls who had lost everything, building it back, one wall at a time. Every morning, Gina Bolton arrived before sunrise, her hair tied up, jeans streaked with dust. She kept her distance from Glory, working beside the crews, serving coffee, cleaning tools, and writing lists in her worn notebook. Every afternoon, Matt DaCosta walked the site, sleeves rolled, notebook in hand, his voice calm but steady. He'd traded his luxury for labor, a man unrecognizable from the one who once signed contracts in glass towers. One day, while inspecting the first completed home, Matt found Gina sitting on the porch steps, watching the sunset. Children laughed in the distance, their voices carried by the wind. "It's strange," she said softly. "For years, I cleaned up other people's lives. Now I get to build one." Matt smiled. "For me, it's the opposite. I spent years building everything, but it wasn't living." They sat in silence for a moment, the sun dipping low, the sky bleeding orange and rose. "When this is done," she said, "what will you do?" He exhaled slowly. "Keep building. Maybe not hotels, maybe not businesses, just lives." She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "You sound like Rex." Matt looked down, chuckling softly. "I finally learned to listen to him." Gina opened her notebook, flipping through the pages until she found a clean one. She wrote something quickly and tore it out, handing it to him. He unfolded the paper. In her small, careful handwriting, it read, "We're all cleaners in our own way. Some of us wash floors, others wash their conscience. Either way, we're just trying to make something shine again." He looked up at her, eyes warm. "You should publish this someday." She laughed softly. "I'm not a writer." "Then be a reminder," he said, "for people like me." The air fell still, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask for words, just presence. Weeks later, the first families moved in. Matt stood beside Gina as keys were handed over, children ran through open doors, and laughter filled walls that had never known warmth before. No speeches, no cameras, just life beginning again. When the last family left with their boxes, Gina turned to him. "You did it." He shook his head. "We did." She smiled. "You kept your promise." He met her eyes. "So did you." For a moment, neither moved. Then Matt reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out her old, battered notebook, the one she'd left behind that night. "I think this belongs to you," he said. She hesitated, taking it gently. "You kept it all this time?" "I couldn't let go of the thing that started everything," he said. She smiled faintly. "Neither could I." They stood together facing the sunset, the cleaner and the billionaire, no longer divided by power or fear, but bound by something much simpler, the quiet miracle of starting over. As the light faded and the desert cooled, Gina closed her eyes, letting the wind brush across her face. Everything hurt less now, not because life got easier, but because she'd stopped running from it. Matt looked at her and said softly, "You asked for one night, Gina, and it changed everything." She smiled. "I think it changed both of us." And it had. Because somewhere between loss and forgiveness, between ruin and rebuilding, they'd both found what they'd been missing all along. Not love born of luck or money, but the kind built from truth, grit, and grace. The kind that doesn't vanish when the lights go out. If you were given one night that could change your life, one chance to begin again, what would you do with it? Share your thoughts below. Someone might need your answer more than you think.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you loved this story, you will definitely love the next one. It's more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So go ahead and watch it now. Click on the image on your screen right away to watch the next one. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It helps and encourages us to share the best human interest stories you'd love.